Big news, everyone. The Society of Massage Archives is officially a 501c3 nonprofit. Greetings. I am Kirby Clark Ellis, President of the Society of Massage Archives. This is a huge milestone, not just for us at SOMA, but for the entire massage therapy community. SOMA is dedicated to preserving and sharing the rich history of our profession, from rare documents and forgotten pioneers to the stories that have shaped this vital practice. We are making sure that our past is never lost. And now, as an official nonprofit, your support of the Society of Massage Archives means more than ever. Your donations are tax deductible, helping us to collect, digitize, and share the untold stories of massage therapy. Want to be a part of history? Here's how you can help. Become a founding supporter, join our Founders Campaign, and be recognized as one of the first 50 donors who made SOMA possible. Or become a recurring contributor when you pledge $20 or more to help us build and sustain this initiative for generations to come. Finally, you can help us out a great deal by spreading the word. Share this video and encourage others to preserve massage history. Your support ensures that future generations of therapists know where we came from and where we're going. Join the Founders Campaign today at societyofmassagearchives.org and make history with us. The past is in our hands. Let's preserve it, one story at a time. The Society of Massage Archives wishes to congratulate Dr. Patricia Benjamin on the occasion of the 10th anniversary of her book, The Emergence of the Massage Therapy Profession in North America, A History in Archetypes. To honor this milestone, SOMA is launching the Adopt a Box campaign, a last chance to rescue and distribute the physical copies of this essential text before they disappear. For just $80, you can help get a box of books into massage schools, libraries, practitioners, and educators' hands. And starting soon, join us for the SOMA Book Club, a monthly conversation where we'll read The Emergence and reflect on the stories, struggles, and triumphs that shaped our profession. Help us preserve massage history and carry it forward. The views and opinions expressed in this podcast do not necessarily reflect those of the Society of Massage Archives. These interviews and commentaries represent the recollections of both the hosts and the guests, and as such, are subject to the occasional slight inaccuracies. The content here is for informational and educational purposes only. You should conduct your own historical research when determining the veracity of any of the statements made within. Greetings, and welcome to the Hands of History podcast, a production of the Society of Massage Archives, where we delve into the rich tapestry of massage therapy's past, explore its evolution, and share the stories that have shaped this vital practice. Today is Monday, July 21st, 2025. I am your host, Kirby Clark Ellis, and I'm joined today with Doug Nelson. Douglas Nelson is board certified in massage therapy and therapeutic bodywork, beginning his career in massage therapy in 1977. He is the president of BodyWork Associates, a massage therapy clinic in Champaign, Illinois. The clinic has 22 therapists and was founded in 1982. He is the founder of Precision Neuromuscular Therapy, and the Teaching Institute has trained thousands of therapists since 1997. Doug is the past president of the Massage Therapy Foundation, a nonprofit organization that is committed to advancing the knowledge and practice of massage therapy by supporting scientific research, education, and community service. Having published many articles in numerous journals and magazines, he is also the author of 3 books: Table Lessons, Insights in the Practice of Massage Therapy, including 2 volumes, and The Mystery of Pain. Doug is the recipient of the 2013 Educator of the Year and 2015 Pioneer Award by the Illinois chapter of the AMTA and was inducted into the Massage Therapy Hall of Fame in 2018. He also received the 2020 President's Award from the AMTA National President, Angela Barker. Most recently, Doug was awarded the 2024 Meritorious Service Award from the Massage Therapy Foundation. Apart from his career, Doug is passionate about service to the community, both locally and globally. He was president of the Champaign Rotary from 2024 to 2025, leading many impactful local and global service initiatives. For his years of leadership with several initiatives, he was awarded the 2025 Distinguished Service Award from the University of Illinois Alumni Association. Welcome, Doug.
Thank you so much. It's nice to be with you, Kirby. I'm looking forward to this. I'm looking forward to the conversation. And thank you for the wonderful work that you and the Society for Massage Archives are doing. This is a really important initiative.
I appreciate those words of encouragement, Doug. We're always really glad to hear that it's landing and that it strikes a chord with people, especially those that have been practicing for a while. Uh,
Absolutely. Really great work.
yes, well, and hey, reading off that bio, absolutely. I can't wait to dig into all of that piece by piece. But take me back to the beginning, Doug. Tell me about your introduction to massage therapy and how you kind of got involved.
Let's remember that was a long time ago, right? So let me piece together where that was. So I grew up on a farm kid, with livestock and pretty far away from massage therapy, right? But music, the arts, that was something I was really passionate about and thought that would be my career until it became evident that many of the people around me who went on to do amazing things in the field. I saw something in them that I did not feel in myself. That passion, that absolute, they were just lit up by that. And I knew deep down inside that wasn't it for me. And that was really painful because everything I had done, like I'm on the bus going in that direction, and then I realize I think I'm on the wrong bus, right? And then that what follows is, well, what bus should I be on, right? And so I didn't know what else to do, and I had to support myself. So I began to teach people how to play the guitar, and I saw oftentimes students, both youth and also adults, who were really struggling. And what I saw was that they knew what to do, cognitively. Their bodies just couldn't execute it.
Hmm.
Right. And so, well, is there something that can be done about that? And again, I was 20 years old, so whatever, but I just started making stuff up. I had them doing movements, I had them playing rhythms, I had them doing just exercise movements, just exploring movement potential. Understand, I didn't know what I was doing, although I had had exposure to yoga. So clearly I was a graduate of, MSU. I was making stuff up, but it actually seemed to work. And I was really inspired by that. So I went on to study yoga and went to an institute that, it's a thing where I was living in that institute and studying yoga. And just as I was kind of finishing that, a roommate came in who had just, had massage therapy training and asked if he could work with me. And oh boy, yeah, like, oh my goodness. What I saw in that, Kirby, was the potential to create change really quickly. And I just did an advanced training just this last weekend, and it's something that we talked about. Like through movement, through exercise, that whole domain, it is possible to create change, but that change takes time. And what is so amazing about manual therapy? Through our hands, like someone can come in, it happens every day in the office, and they have restricted range of motion and maybe they're only like 35, 40 degrees in right rotation. In 10 minutes, I can take them to 60, 65 degrees. That gives them hope that change is possible. So, for instance, in that training, we saw someone with kind of a forward head, an exaggerated kyphotic position, and when she walked out, she just kept like, oh my goodness, I feel like I'm standing up so much straighter. I'm going to have to adjust the mirror in the car, one of the participants was like, well, isn't it important to, like she's got to do all these things to like sustain that, and then it's like, yes, and that is possible. But now she has hope that change is possible. Before that, my goodness, you're just fighting against all these tissue restrictions, and it makes it really hard. It's not that it's impossible, but you are definitely swimming against a very strong current, right? And that's what I saw back then. It's so strange to be so many years later and still feel the same thing. That's probably one of the greatest assets is to create change and to give people hope that will inspire them to do the things they need to do to then, it's like, hey, keep the change, right? And the way you keep the change is by doing things that sustain it. But you will not do that if somehow deep down inside you feel like it's too difficult, too hard, or that change ultimately isn't really possible. And I'm sorry to keep going on this, but if let's say someone, and we had somebody who came in who's diagnosed with arthritic changes in the spine, right? Like, show me somebody who doesn't, right? But they feel like, well, that's my lot in life. Here I'm stuck with this. But if by soft tissue means you can change their experience, in 3 to 4 sessions, in increased function, increase whatever, right? Then it casts doubt on that diagnosis as a lifelong sentence. And again, think of how that affects the person in terms of their perception of life in this body. And the other thing that came up at that time is, again, just coming where I came from as a farm kid and whatever, I've always been just sensitive to regular folks out there, right? What I saw back then is that so many people were hurting, and what we need is some way to very efficiently address musculoskeletal issues because those seem to be overlooked. It's a little hard when I look back to, is that how clear was I really, from this perspective? But I think I'm right about that, and certainly it's only my passion about that. My wife might say obsession, but I'm going with passion. Is that that's still true? Maybe more so today.
Absolutely. I may be jumping ahead, Doug, but I'm going to go ahead and just engage you on the lowest hanging fruit, I think. Is it what you're describing is with inspiring and sparking hope in clients, you're really encouraging a mind shift, like a different sort of awareness, an opening up to the possibilities. It's done through manual hands-on work, which we're trained and skilled in, but it's also, we're delving into the psyche, and I'm wondering if you would agree in that, first of all, and then two, if you feel like the direction that we're starting to at least have discussions about moving towards we're having more awareness of the psychological aspects of pain.
Absolutely. And it's a really good discussion to have. I think especially for me, I'm still going to go back to giving people hope and that change is possible. And it's more than just an assurance and comforting, it's way more than that. Like, this whole thing is predicated on delivering results, right? Like, if you have this wonderful experience and you still have the same restriction when you get off of the table, your brain says, well, that was nice, but here we are, right? So it's still predicated on delivering results. And maybe that's a distinction for me, Kirby, that people who come to see myself and people in the clinic and my whole kind of domain is very outcome based. People come with something very specific, and our job is to make a difference with that. And you have to deliver results. I mean, theories are easy, results are actually hard. And I'm laser focused on that.
I'm wondering if you can articulate how you bridge the gap between theory and results.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really easy. You know, client walks out the door. Did you achieve the goal that they were looking for when they walked in? It's that simple, And I have to say, earlier in my career, I made all sorts of excuses. Maybe it takes time, maybe this, maybe, well, it takes you about it. Yeah, I was just making stuff up to make myself feel better about my lack of skill, basically. And only when I was working in some athletic environments, in the NBA and in the NFL, is like, you better deliver the goods, like, now. And I thought this will be the best job I've ever been fired from. And then I realized, oh my gosh, the work is actually capable of this, but I need to really up my skills to make that happen.
Gotcha. Great conversation so far. I don't want to jump too far ahead, but tell me, Doug, I kind of want to string this along and make it a little bit more succinct. Tell me how we go from farm boy to musician, it sounds like, and then a musician teacher to yoga. Is that kind of the
Yeah, it's really interesting. When I was interested in music, I was interested in jazz stuff and was influenced by people like John McLaughlin, this amazing guitarist, who was very interested in Eastern philosophy. So, if if he's really great at playing the guitar and he's interested in Eastern philosophy, then that's what I have to do, right? And and then it just opened a door to all sorts of really interesting things and being exposed to that. And I have to tell you a really funny story about that. My office sponsored he and Chick Corea when they came to play in Champaign. And so we sponsored the concert. And so afterwards, I got to meet Mr. McLaughlin. And as he's walking toward me, I said to my wife, "Don't let me say anything really stupid." And as I shook his hand, I said, "Mr. McLaughlin, I've long admired not just your art, but your life." And he looked at me and he said, "Oh, is there a difference?" And that, well, I got that out of the way. Um, and and so, it's interesting. Our life is our art in that way. It's a canvas, right? And choose wisely about where you put the brush.
Hmm. I like that. Oh gosh, I despise these forks in the roads because I know they're in
Yeah,
to cover everything. Because it sounds like when you were providing these musician instruction, you were kind of experimenting without a formal introduction to movement.
yeah, absolutely. And then by doing certain movements and seeing that people were like restricted in their movement capabilities, I found that it's like every time I discover a new world, it's got paved roads, stoplights, and there's a lot of people there. You're right. It's like, oh, it's not really a new world. And so as I'm kind of making stuff up, having people move, do stuff, then again, through these other influences, I discover, oh, like people have been doing this for thousands of years. Oh, okay. Uh, and so I realized I'm a novice here, an idiot. And so I have a lot of work to do and just began to experiment and learn in that tradition. And that was a formative thing for me, and it also kind of shifted me out of you know, farm kid, Midwest thing into something. It's a big world out there.
So it sounds like your interest in artists, and particularly Mr. McLaughlin, it sounds like that really kind of sparked this interest in Eastern approaches and perhaps was your introduction to yoga?
Absolutely, absolutely. And then studying at this institute and met all sorts of great people and I have to say, I played a concert just doing drone stuff with Alice Coltrane, one of the high points of my music career and the low point of hers. But but I got to meet lots of great people, and again, I was so young, I didn't even fully appreciate. I met Buckminster Fuller and like all these amazing people, and I was too young really to fully appreciate the opportunity that was in front of me. But, it certainly planted seeds that probably only grew later, So I look back at that and think, oh gosh, if I'd have known, I would have asked better questions instead of nodding my head, smiling like I think I understand what they're saying, but I hope I'm not the only one, right?
You're absolutely describing when I look back on my own entry level education to massage, oh gosh, I did not have it together. If I was who I am now and could ask the questions that I would ask now,
Yeah,
oh gosh, it would have been such a better experience.
yeah.
I want to know, so when you got introduced to yoga, when did you finally, I love what you said at the beginning of this conversation. You felt like you were on the wrong bus. Oh, that is rich. That automatically I can understand and feel really the terror. When did you start to feel like you were on the right bus?
Yeah. You know, that's a great question. Even even the yoga thing for me, it was powerful, it was great, but I still did not have that. I'm looking over there at my cello, and I'm a fairly new cello student. I sound like I'm a new cello student. I'll go that way. There's something when you're playing a note, when you get it perfectly in tune, all the other strings just start resonating, you know? And I feel like I spend my whole life looking for resonance at every level, including this conversation, right? But the real resonance wasn't until I started doing, the massage and the hands-on thing. And that just like with every part of me, unequivocally, unquestionably, I knew this is what I want to do. And again, that's really wild because I am Norwegian on my mom and dad's side. You'll get that later. I'm full-blooded. In fact, I had the 23andMe thing done, and I'm 97% Norwegian and 2% Scandinavian. So my wife looked at it and went, hopeless. Um, yeah. So, but Norwegian farm kid, touch was not something that happened in our family. Only by accident. That I mean, right? So what a wild 180-degree shift. But there was something about that for me was just, yeah, it just resonated, and I knew this is it. And it took a long time really just to refine those skills, but I had that youthful passion of I know I want to do this. And when I look back about just so many of the iterations of this, like trying to do this for a living, and you have to remember when this was, right? It never occurred to me that I would fail or that this would be, I was just laser focused on this is what I want to do. And the fact that I was penniless and whatever was like just didn't matter. Right? I was just on fire with what this work was and what its potential was, even though I really didn't have the skills to execute it at that time. So
Well, I would say it has definitely been fruitful to pursue it anyway.
you bet.
I can't help myself. Being from kind of that maybe touch neutral kind of family environment into a
Neutral. Well, that's being nice.
going into massage school, how did you square that away? How did you brush up against that? And was there a lot of hesitation or resistance to touch?
Not at all.
Okay.
So interesting. Yeah, so interesting. Yeah, that's interesting. That yeah, never came up, never maybe it's because, I was probably starved for it. I don't know, but it didn't feel like that. It just felt like this is good. This is natural. Yeah. I've never really thought about that, but yeah, it just felt like right on target. And yeah, I don't know what to say about that, but there was no point in me that was resistant to that or push boundaries for me. Not at all.
Okay.
Interesting.
My follow-up might push up against that Norwegianness a little bit.
Sure.
Tell me, on the flip side of that, then, how did your family react? Did you clue them into that you'd be going to essentially like a touch profession?
Yeah. Yeah. Not well. As you might expect, right? You want a what? It's funny. They were tolerant, but I don't know what they told other people, but it's interesting. Only when there was a time in the, let's see, 90s when I worked in the NBA and NFL, suddenly, then it's like, then they were, really excited, especially my mom, because she was such a sports nut. That now it's cool, right? So, and I think for my dad, I mean, this quintessential kind of, he had very little context outside the farm and whatever, but he had hip problems. And one time I brought my table and did some work, and I think for him that was the this is not not what I thought. So if there was ever a little window into that, that was probably that world for him to experience what that's like. So, but other than that, yeah, it wasn't received well to,
Yeah, definitely. And I can relate even, I started in the 2010s and my family also kind of had a bristling up against it and
sure.
kind of shock and, all of the connotations with sex work that come along with this profession. Had to kind of fight through and just, but it sounds like you automatically got it. It wasn't really something that you had to convince yourself of. It felt right and it felt natural, it sounds like.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, no question. And I was around some really great people at that time and really inspiring folks that helped me realize that vision and see what could be. And so that was really exciting. So yeah, that was not a struggle.
I'm also curious, Doug, have you always been in Illinois?
So that training was in Connecticut,
Okay.
but most of my life has been, in Illinois. But that training was in Connecticut, and then I came back to Illinois after that.
All right. And then just because this is as good a place as any to kind of sandwich this question in, it
Sure.
looks like Illinois didn't regulate massage until 2002. Talk to me about, I assume that you were practicing when you got back to Illinois before licensure. Does that sound
Oh, of
correct?
course. Yeah,
In the 2000s, were you following that push for licensure at all?
absolutely. And really encouraged that. So, before that, it's really interesting. So I lived in Ottawa, Illinois, which was my hometown. I grew up in a farm outside of town, but I came back from Connecticut, was in town and developing the work and practicing. I also worked in a rehab facility with a rehabilitation nurse and a physical therapist because I knew, at least I had self-awareness to know that I was really young and I needed more experience. And so that was a really wonderful thing. And that, especially the lady who was that I worked with, the rehabilitation nurse, it was so good. She was so good with patients. And I learned a lot from her. It's like 58-year-old Italian crazy nurse with this, 21 or 22-year-old Norwegian, really shy farm kid. Boy, she had a lot of fun with me at my expense. But I watched the way that she worked with and treated patients, and she's been an inspiration for me throughout my whole career. So there's that piece. I have to tell you that at one point I just kept thinking about her, and I actually looked her up, and I knew where they were going to retire. And luckily, I was able to connect with her and tell her the influence that she had on me because she was the only person in that area who was supportive of the what I wanted to do. When I left to like try to do this full time, whoa, everybody just thought that was the dumbest thing in the world, and she was the only person who was supportive. And it was the biggest loss for her with me leaving, but she was the one that was supportive. And I was able to tell her that, over the phone. And the really cool thing is, Kirby, she was on hospice care at the time.
Hmm.
So to be able to say to somebody, you know, you made a difference in my life and something I think about often, that's really cool. And I suspect I'm one of a long line of people that she had an influence on. So then I moved to Champaign. There were a few people doing massage, but yeah, it was very sketchy and it for me it was like I could be one of the people to influence what the community thinks about this. And that's something that I try to point out to all therapists is you represent this field in your community. What people think about the field is what you represent. So take that seriously, right? And that's something that I've taken, yeah, that whole community service thing really seriously because each of us represents the field. And it took me a while to think about that and realize the thing I can control about perception is how we represent it. Because all the other stuff is, sometimes people will come in and, it's like, well, where did you get that idea? Like, I'm not going to let people's perception about the work, if I'm the one who should set that, right? Not people coming in. So that was something I took really, really seriously. How do we do that? And how do we represent the field and the work in a way that is what we want people to perceive?
Yeah, I don't know. I'm going to wax a little philosophy here, but I don't know if it's the American individualism or if it's the fact that we do work in these silos, in these private offices so often, where this idea of being individual versus being a collective. And I really like, and certainly it's evident through your work, especially when we'll talk about at the Champaign Rotary, but this idea of collectivism and representing the profession as a whole through being one person.
Yeah. You know, may I tell you a story?
Yeah, please,
Yeah.
always.
So we're kind of jumping around in the timeline, and I'm sorry for that, but
That's okay.
it is what it is. So with that idea of, oh, I get to represent the profession and I get to define it. I'm not going to let other people define it, right? Like, people would come in and it's not what I do, and they're thinking, oh, it's going to be a spa, or whatever. Like, that's not what I do. I'm not gonna let their perceptions about that. I need to make sure that I'm clear about who we are, what we do, and why it matters. And and largely that's about community engagement. And so I was on that track, so I thought, and I was, but so I was also doing some work volunteering on committees and that at our local performing arts center, which is unbelievable. It's, for the size of city we have, the number and quality of artists is jaw-dropping. I mean, it's amazing. I mean, Yo-Yo Ma, I mean, you just like, wow, for our size, unbelievable. So the director called me one day and said, I have three dancers I want you to see. They're performing tomorrow and hurting. Can you see them? It's like, yes, at the end of the day today, I'll stay and I'll see them. Absolutely. So I came around the corner, and if I say three dancers, Kirby, I bet you get an image in your head of dancers, right? 8-year-old, 12-year-old, 15-year-old, all from Uganda, all orphans, all three of them had seen their parents murdered.
Um,
Not my image, right? So I'm like, whoa. So I start with the 15-year-old, and we walk down the hallway. We go into my office after working for 10 or 15 minutes. This young man said, so that thing in the hall, is that something pretty on the wall, or does it have meaning to you? Well, it's a scroll I brought back from Kyoto that I think in all the years I've had it, I don't think three people have said a thing, right? And here's a 15-year-old who wants to know, is it just something pretty or does it have meaning to you? And it's like, wow. One, I can't believe he noticed. And two, what it says is Ichigo Ichi, which is, one moment, one opportunity. For someone like myself who sees one person after the other all day long, when I glance at that, it's like, yes, this moment shall never return, in a day of one after the other. It's a really good thing for me to glance at. So I explained that, and kids are, oh, wow. And then he said, well, who owns all this? I said, well, I do. And he said, is it your business or your mission?
hmm.
Well, answer, yes. And as soon as I answered, he did not hesitate. He said, explain to me your business's role in the community.
Hmm.
That's what I thought. Like, oh, I probably had my business for 15 years before I thought about that, right? And what is your business's role in the community? And that encounter really ramped up my own commitment to, oh, we are really going to up the engagement with the community and community service, and that's something that the office has really taken seriously by donating services, volunteering in different things, just being an asset to the community. So when we talk to people, like if I'm at some public thing and people find out where I'm from, inevitably people will thank me not only for the work that we're doing in the office, but for other things that we're doing in the community. And that represents the field really, really well.
Mm, yeah. Ah, yeah. Wow. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's an incredible and that's an impactful story that really does a good job of illustrating why it's important to be a good representation and a good steward of the profession as a whole. I love that, Doug. Thank you.
Yeah.
Sharing.
And again, and when young people now starting a practice talk to me about, how do you do marketing and whatever, it's like, and oh, you guys have this big clinic and you see like we see a big percentage of the population in Champaign, like you must have an incredible social media. Like, I don't even know if we have one, like we don't do anything like that, right? What we do is be a visible servant and asset to the community, and people respect that and want to support it, in doing that, in doing good, we end up doing well.
It's important. And then I'm also wondering, this brings up a question for me, Doug. The story of the dancer asking you, what is your business's role in the community? Obviously, that was kind of taken literally, what is your in Champaign, Illinois, geographically? I'm wondering, do you ever think, obviously you do, I think I'm going to assume the answer, but do you think about what is your business and specifically yourself's role in the community of massage therapists?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And in a way, all the time. How can I best serve the profession that, Kirby, it's been, I mean, how many decades now, right? And it's hard to describe. My wife might be a better person to tell you just how much of my focus has been on the work in the large perspective, not just my office and not just me treating people, but I so believe in the value of the work itself and what that need is both locally, nationally, and globally. But I really only know probably locally and nationally. What I think I saw in the late 70s is only more true now than ever before, that the number of people who struggle with musculoskeletal issues, they're generally lost and set adrift in the healthcare system. Like, you present with some undefined pain, you have undefined thigh pain. You'll be tested for all sorts of stuff. Once it's clear that you don't have MS and that and everything else, all this crazy stuff gets ruled out, which I understand, right? But once it's like, you know what? It looks like it's just musculoskeletal. It's like you're released into the wild, And the good news is you don't have all these things. But for the person, it's like, yeah, but my leg still hurts. They're like, yeah, but it's nothing serious. And you're like, well, it's serious to me, right? And then what does that person do, and where do they go, and what is life like for them? This is the thing about which I am just very passionate. Like, we need to address those people, and for the profession, it's not about us, right? Yeah, I guess the profession as a whole, but I'm not an advocate for the profession. I feel like I'm an advocate for that person out there who hurts and doesn't know what to do. If we keep that as the focus, instead of like, how do we help our profession? I think we help our profession by serving that person best, you know. And if we keep that as a focus, I think that's a really good thing. And again, there are many uses. This is probably becoming clear, like in the massage world, right? That, is a big, big thing. I mean, if you say the word massage to, 100 people just in the public, you're going to get all sorts of different perceptions. And if you say that to 100 massage therapists, you're going to get all sorts of different perceptions. Understand that. And everything has a place. All right, it'll all serve a purpose. But I'm interested in that outcome-based massage as a way of addressing very specific muscular issues. That's not better or worse than anything else. It's just the thing that I'm interested in and the population that I'm interested in serving.
I also kind of want to go back to the story you told of the nurse that really inspired you. I'm wondering if that has kind of led the way or opened doors to more interdisciplinary work across other caring professions like nursing.
You bet. I will say with her, Kirby, it was what I saw in her is her ability, that the soft skills to relate to clients. That is the lesson I learned from her. In terms of interdisciplinary stuff, for me, I never really got that. I didn't get that till years later when I did in at the professional sports level, to see the way that they had teams of people do that. That's for me when I really got it, of how we could be just another piece in a larger suite, because there's so many aspects that go into taking care of these athletes. And the thing about that is, after doing that for a while, here we go again. I thought this is unbelievable and amazing what these athletes get. But what about the guy out there who just can't pick up his kid and is trying to go to work and is really hurting? What about those people, right? The technology and the treatment that I saw at the athletic level, and the same thing I have to say is true here at the university. For instance, I mean, we work with university athletic teams, and oh my goodness, the way these athletes are cared for, I can't say enough good things. If a quarterback tweaks his ankle, I mean, he's playing, if not the next game, the following week, and he's not playing in pain. He is better because he gets fabulous treatment. And there has been such a great kind of shift in taking care of these athletes. They're not playing in pain. They're not whatever. I mean, they're getting, at least here, incredibly good care. However, if you're in the dance department, right, the same resources might not be true.
Yeah.
Do you know? And again, the average, the person out there who's just, working hard and whatever, what resources do they have? So I keep going back to that, Kirby, because those are the people I'm interested in serving. I love seeing what's possible, but it's like, but can we scale that, and can we provide services to people who are really desperate for some help and have just resigned themselves to, well, I guess, I guess I get this because I'm getting older. It's like, really? Because I think your other thigh is the same age. So give me a break. I don't think so.
Well, and the bell that's ringing for me as you're answering that question, Doug, I go back to what you shared about your father and kind of introducing him through his hip pain. I find, especially where I'm at, for lack of a better term right now, blue collar workers
Hmm.
certainly use the work a whole lot more. Well, I don't know. Yeah, I'm getting into judgmental, but who could benefit so well from this work, often have so much resistance or these preconceived notions that we're talking about. Uh,
Yeah.
and I'm 100% on board with you with how do we reach these people and how can we scale the exemplary treatment that others are getting to, the common man, in other words, to say.
Yeah. It brings up an image. I hadn't thought of this in years, but this was several years ago. But I'm at the front desk in the office, and this woman had come in. She was seeing one of my staff, and I just happened to be at the desk. And she said, "Gosh," she said, "I wish my husband would do this, but because he could really use this. He's hurting." But he said that guys don't do that.
Yeah.
And just as she said that, the whole University of Illinois basketball team walked in. And I leaned over and said, "Do you want to tell them that?" And by the way, your husband, who's probably a crazy basketball fan, better get with the program because the people that he admires, yeah, they're all here. So, and, just the look on her face of, and I would have loved to have been there when she told her husband about that little experience, and that's actually been just like my mom. One of the really great things in many years ago when sports massage became something is that just culturally our culture does tend to love and worship athletes, and when they see people that they admire using these kinds of things, then all of a sudden, right, it becomes much more acceptable. So I think that's really important. And I think it's also, where do the images like that blue collar person comes from? I don't know if I should say this or not, but which means I probably shouldn't, but I'll do it anyway. If that guy sees an ad for massage in wherever, right, and it's some scantily clad, whatever, he's thinking, "Nuh-uh," right? Again, I think we all need to be very careful about the images that we put out and what we say about that. And again, when you have when we put out images that it's some outrageously beautiful young girl, scantily clad, like this person out there might go, "I don't look like that." And I can't, it's like, boy, just shoot yourself in the foot, why don't you? Like, so it's important that people have it accessible to them. So we have not necessarily been our own advocates for things like that, and I think that's important.
Yeah, absolutely. It's so often I would challenge us to think, how many doors are we closing for ourselves when we let images and perceptions like that live on unchallenged?
You bet. And it's like we see a lot of people for TMJD stuff. We have dentists who refer to us, and and again, like we're treating these things. We don't have those people disrobed, right? I mean, they're coming from a dentist office, right? You can't like, okay, and now take off. You're like, are you nuts? Like, no, 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 right? You just try to make that experience the least amount of friction possible. When people, like clothing kind of stuff, it's like, wear a snowsuit. It doesn't matter, right? Like, this is not the issue. If that's and so the things that we put out need to make sure that we don't create our own barriers.
Let's see. Let's go back. Help me clear up all of the timeline because we have done some jumping, which is also fine. But uh,
Oh man, I'm sorry about this. Yeah.
no, 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 no. It's great. It's great, Doug. Because life and our influences and like you said, if our lives are our canvas, canvases can get pretty messy and all over the place. So don't feel the need to apologize.
Well said.
Uh, what prompted the move out to Connecticut? How did you hear about the school that you attended, and can you share more about that entry level program?
Yeah, well, it wasn't really an entry level program. It's really quite interesting. And so that was kind of a yoga institute. And one of the people connected to the institute was Steve Kitts. Steve then went on to found the Connecticut Center for the Study of Massage Therapy, a really influential person in the field. But at that time, it wasn't even a school, but Steve was doing like, I don't know how many weeks, multiple weeks of training. And because I had realized, oh, I think this is what I'm more interested in. I, started studying with Steve and doing some work with him. Just a wonderful human being. And even though that was, not a long time, but it was a great, great introduction to the work, and it's not only the what Steve taught, but the way he taught it and his integrity as a person was very inspiring. So there was that, and then coming back, then taking lots of different continuing ed things and just putting together stuff, and then I studied at this school that not long after closed. The bottom line with this, Kirby, is my original education had massive gaps and holes relative to like other people who went to like amazing schools. It turns out that was such an advantage for me.
Okay.
Yeah, because I have always been aware of massive gaps and holes in my education. And so I did something about it. I have to say that I have seen people who've graduated from really good schools who believe that they know what they need to know. And so they have come out at this level and that's where they stayed. And other people realizing that, gosh, there's so much more I need to know. Those people in the end just eclipse them. So what you want is great education that teaches you to embrace lifelong learning and that this is a never-ending, ever-changing field. So that's what I look for. But that early, I mean, you have to remember what time period this was. There were a few schools at that time. I was penniless and just couldn't afford to do that. What was seemingly a deficit turned into a big advantage that I still feel today. Like I still feel like there's no way. I'm aware of the gaps and holes in my knowledge base more than anybody else.
Don't have to point them out to me. I know they're there.
Yeah.
I'm going to make the assumption it sounds like there would be a lot of self-education and self-discovery going on in that case.
Yes, and then at that time it was studying with, whatever like continuing ed stuff, just trying to get different wholes and pieces and learn as much as possible. I have to say, it's interesting. Like 3 years in, I wasn't very impressed with the physical therapist that I worked with. The rehab nurse was amazing, the PT not so much. But I did think that PT might offer, a path for me. So I applied at several different schools. It's very interesting. Like one of the deans told me, "Oh, you're already a massage therapist. We'll never be able to train that out of you."
Oh,
You know, because again, in that time period, hands-on stuff was seen as, oh, that's like old school. We don't do that anymore. I just find it really interesting because now it's like the hip, the vogue thing. It's like, yeah, stay tuned. So, and then I thought, well, osteopathy. So, because the town where I grew up, we didn't see these people, but I was very aware of a bunch of osteopaths in the community who did really great hands-on work. Not that my family ever visited them, but I knew that existed. So I took the prerequisites and then went to the school in Kirksville, the founding school of osteopathy, only to find out that at that time, all manual courses were electives.
oh.
So you could go through the whole training program and never take a manual therapy course. And that's another whole discussion as to why that happened at that time. But it was like, wow. I did not want to pursue anything that would take me away from me putting my hands on a person with discomfort. And so people have always asked me over the years, like, why didn't you do this? Why didn't you do that? And because any of those things would have taken me away from the very thing I love the most, which is me with someone who hurts and these things to make a difference, right? And so if anything would have embellished that, I would have done it. But certainly at that time, everything would have taken me away from that. And so it was of no interest to me. And then it's like, oh, great. Instead of a clear pathway that I just follow along, I'm going to have to figure this out by myself. So there you have it.
I have at least three or four questions that come up in that answer. First of all, because this one, it might not lead anywhere, so I'm going to start with it. Osteopathy was mentioned, and I'm in Arkansas, you're in Illinois. The state between us is Missouri. I automatically think of the Still Brothers. I'm wondering if craniosacral therapy has ever played a part in your education, Doug, and if you see where it fits in.
I've had training in this. I find myself remarkably inept at it. But I think there's great value in this. It's not, it doesn't resonate with me, but do I find value in this and do I think it fills a place? Absolutely. Absolutely.
Cool. I'm wondering if you were taking these CE courses, is there a particular route or a specific name that you were drawn to at the time to fill those?
hmm I took, many different things, certainly in the beginning. One of the ones that like Moshe Feldenkrais. So yeah, I've studied with Feldenkrais. Again, like even back then, the trainings were like $12,000, like which to me is like yeah, right. You must be kidding. But at the time, I think just to kind of lay the groundwork for that and get people interested, he was traveling around the country and doing like CE things, just, like 3, 4 day things. So that I could afford to do. Man, I slept in my car because I couldn't afford the hotel. I could only afford to be in the training. Wow. But I'm not sure that very few people also in the training spend as much of their income to be there as I did, percentage wise, right? Oh my gosh. Again, I was so young, I didn't really fully understand Moshe, what Moshe was teaching. But since then, I've constantly gone back to that to it, like it keeps unfolding. Like I just keep realizing things that he said, I have so much of, his writings, and that's been an underlying influence for me. If you don't mind, I remember, again, Norwegian farm kid meets Israeli physicist. Oh, this is not going to go well, right? I was terrified of him for good reason. But again, I'd spend every dime, and I thought, this is so cool. This is so cool. I'm so excited to be here. And I remember that, like, one of the first things he would have us breathe, and it's like, this is so cool. Now try it this way. And then you take a break. Like, this is so cool. And now try it this way. This is pretty cool. And then you rest, and then you try it this way. Okay, this is getting less cool. And then by the time we got to like the 15th variation that you go through, like at that point, I'm like, are you kidding? I spent all my money and this is what we're like, and then at some point after like making you do it all these different ways, right? It was just like, okay, now just relax and now just breathe at whatever way feels natural to you. And I'm like, oh God, I can't even remember how to breathe. Like I spent all my money and I can't even breathe anymore. And then I realized, oh, I'm breathing differently than I did before. Maybe the old guy knows. Oh my gosh. But yeah, a little bit lost on me at the moment, but the brilliance of it all, of just exposing the nervous system to multiple ways and letting the nervous system make a choice
Mhm.
rather than giving directives. And it's something that, in this training, just, I was talking to the therapist about use your hands to ask questions, not give directives. Um, and so that's right back to Moshe. So that was very fundamental for me. There were other things that I explored that just, didn't resonate with as much Pierre Panetier and polarity therapy, all the different things, psychophysical integration, like a bunch of different things. But then when I landed at a workshop where Paul St. John was teaching and teaching neuromuscular therapy that came out of the Raymond Nimmo tradition, that for me, like, whoa, now we're on to something that felt like, okay, this is something that really changed the game for me.
All right, cool. Well, I just can't help but ask the difference between the neuromuscular work that Paul St. John was doing and now your teaching institute, Precision Neuromuscular Therapy.
Sure. So yeah, it's hard for me. All I can say is back then. So I'm comparing what I'm doing now to back then. That's not really a fair comparison in any way. So, but back then, right? Then it was much more kind of formulaic and routine based. And and again, this was back then, right? But not much about the assessment aspect. Like, here's really great treatment for this muscle or for that muscle, but not very much about the assessment of, yes, but why is it that you think that muscle is involved? And also, certainly not much about any of the science behind it, other than the underpinnings that came from Nimmo and his writings and work, and Paul kind of developed on top of that. But again, I'm speaking about the past. But a pivotal moment for me, I was with a professional sports team, and understand the orthopedist was a jerk, and he didn't really want me there. He thought that this work is like silly, right? In fact, they got into a little discussion the first day I was there. This is not how you want your first day to go, right? The head coach is the person who wanted me there, and I can tell you who's going to win that discussion. But like, I'm the person who has to work with the orthopedist, and so it's like a few days later, and I'm treating a player, and and the orthopedist said, "What the hell do you think that's going to do?" Well, that's a conversation starter. And as a good Norwegian, I was so mad I almost said something. And as I was driving home, I was just shaking. And then this gut-wrenching thing, kind of like I was on, the wrong bus thing.
Yeah.
I had that same, like, I don't know that I know the answer to that question.
Hmm.
Okay, the guy's a jerk, and I could have used a couple other words, but I'm going with that one since you're recording this. But it's a fair question. And I knew at a gut-wrenching level that I didn't really know the answer to that. When you do this, what do you expect to happen? By what was your starting point? And where are you going? And how will you know when you get there? And by what information will you know that you're on the wrong road? I realized I did not know this. And then I began to question, how do I know what I know? Turns out other people have asked that question. And then I thought, there's this thing called science. And then I just got really interested in the science behind the work and just dove into that for many, many years. And let me just add this on the end of it. It's really important to do that to as much as possible, but you may not fully understand the mechanisms of the things that you do. In the end, what matters is clinical results, right? Even if you don't fully understand the science behind it, if you can demonstrate real, tangible, and replicatable results, the science will catch up to you, right? And I get a little testy about people who are like, well, what's the science behind that? It's like, well, uh, many years ago, I was at a conference for physicians, which it was on musculoskeletal pain. And I just saw this and I thought, I'm going. And they didn't ask, whether I was a physician or not. They have really good food at their conferences, I just want to say. And people asked, how's your practice? I said, pretty good. But there was they got into this whole discussion of, I think it might have been the mechanism of action of something. It might have been trigger points. I don't know, whatever it was. But this guy got up to the microphone. There's a microphone in the aisle, and this guy got up and said, "Can anyone tell me the mechanism of action of anesthesia?" And everybody got really quiet. And he said, "Thought so." And then he walked away. And that was the end of the discussion. And I said to the physician next to me, like, what just happened here? And he said, "Don't you know who that is?" No. And he's and he, I don't know, remember the guy's name, but he literally wrote the book on anesthesia. And that, I don't know if it's still true, but people did not understand the mechanism, but I'm pretty sure people are using it every day and quite effectively, right? So to his point, it doesn't excuse the constant learning and struggle to do that. But in the end, in the clinic, what people care about is delivering results, not the cleverness of your argument.
Right. Yeah, I'm wondering because it sounds like a struggle or almost like a dance, I suppose, of, the science, the mechanism, and then just the results that it does work.
Absolutely, right? And so, you embrace and constantly strive to understand, but you've got to apply that understanding in ways that are in the clinic. And again, it all comes down to results. And this is why I feel so strongly about for me, teaching, it comes out of my own practice and probably maybe to some deficit over the years because I've never given up just seeing a ton of people every week. But I think that's really important because when people ask me a question in the teaching world, I can tell them about my own struggles and failures. I think if you're not in the clinic every day and being tested like that, you have easy answers to very complicated questions. So somebody will say, well, when somebody has this, you just do this. So I want to say, and how many people have you seen with that condition over the last 3 months? And if the answer is, two or one, I'm less interested in what you have to say, and the people who are in the clinic every day, the clinic will absolutely humble you, right? Because there's nothing like that person who comes in and says, all that stuff you did last week, that didn't help at all. That's the real world. I find that for me personally and all the people who teach, in the Institute, we each really try to convey that. The struggle is the reality. And, you do this and it'll solve every pain known to man kind of stuff. Like, get over it. All right. Like, the struggle is the real world. So if you're a therapist who's struggling and welcome to the real world. And I think those people who are teaching need to understand and have access to that clinical experience. And the more distant you get from that, I worry about that just because I just know in my own experience how humbling the clinic is when you're seeing people with real world problems.
I want to start, Doug, by saying that I think you're brilliant. I think you're a very engaged and thinking practitioner. I want to know how do you come back from, because it's heartbreaking. What you did last week wasn't effective. It didn't help. How do you come back from that? And how do you not fall into the trap of feeling like an imposter? Because that's like the first thing that comes up for me is, well, I don't know what I'm doing then, and why do I even bother
Oh,
anymore?
no. Yeah, no. Understand that feeling. But, for me, and I think this took a while. Oof, oh boy, I have so many thoughts with this. But this is so important that you say this, Kirby. This is so important. And this is maybe for the profession. If I have one thing to give to this might be it, coming out of that clinical experience. So, number one, the idea that somebody's going to come in and that you're going to do one suite of things and it's going to work, you must be like, really? Like, wow, I don't think so. Like Einstein said, we wouldn't call it research if we knew what we were doing, and in the clinic, like the idea that you have a key that fits every lock is just no, 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 no. So what happens is someone comes in. It's my daily experience. People always. I know folks generally don't believe me, but I'm telling you, it's my daily experience in the clinic to have somebody say, that didn't help at all. But here's the thing, that didn't help. All that means to me is I got a lot more where that came from, right? Like if we focused on these things, then let's alter what that focus is. And then there are so many ways to do that, right? And not the least of which is duration and frequency, right? Maybe you address the right muscle in the wrong way at the wrong time. That's another possibility. There are innumerable things that you can alter to keep nuancing this thing to make a difference in terms of your approach, the things you address, the reasons you address them, the frequency, the duration, the location, all of these things. You realize, oh my God, the possibilities are endless. And so you just keep tweaking it until you find the answer. So, to that end, if someone presents, I mentioned TMJD stuff, if someone calls the clinic and says, I have jaw pain, I want to just come and try this once and see if it makes a difference, but not with us, we won't let you. Because one session, you're going to come in and this is going to be like, don't think so, right? Unless you really agree to like 3 sessions, I don't want to go down that road. It's a little bit like, I ate a salad once, I didn't lose any weight.
Yeah.
Ridiculous. Like, really, you exercise once and you're going to base out like exercise is helpful or not helpful because I tried it once? I don't think so. Everything, including this, is a process. So, what gives people to the imposter thing? What if, like, if you feel like, gosh, I'm, less than, like that imposter thing? I hate to say this, but what if you're right? And what that means is there's stuff I don't know. You can respond to that in 2 ways, like, I just want to quit. Or you can say, there are gaps in my knowledge and I'm going to fill them, right? And that's what I want to convey to therapists. Every time that struggle happens, that is your window of opportunity for learning. If you ask me from whom did I learn the most over my career, I will say it's all the clients with whom I have struggled and failed. I've always told people, and I have it now, I can show you on the screen, a list of clients. I can't do that, but a list of clients with whom I'm failing. Those have always been my best teachers. It's like, okay, that didn't work. What else do we got? Okay, what if I looked at this in a different way? What am I missing? Now I'm just going to go back into over there is like a library of a massive amount of books and then I'm going to dive into the literature and see what possible route could I do. These clients have been my best teachers over the years. So, when a therapist in the seminar or whatever, like, well, how in the world did you come up with that? It's like by screwing up royally, like I got to this by doing mistakes that you are not hopefully going to make. You can figure out your own. I got that one covered. Confidence, Kirby, comes from competence. You are going to get lost. You are going to struggle. The thing is, do you have the tools to get unlost? To think that you're not going to get lost, that's bravado. And believe me, for a long point in my career, and I'm not even going to admit to this or how long, bravado was in no short supply for me. Like once I felt like I was there, I'm horrified and embarrassed at some of my attitudes at that time. And then what happened is in the clinic, when people didn't respond in the way, well, maybe they just weren't ready. Maybe, like I made up all sorts of excuses. Oh God, it's so embarrassing even just to admit that. And then when that orthopedist said that, that was the moment of, oh, I don't know why. It just cut through and I realized there's stuff I just don't know. And I need to admit that and embrace that. And, I was teaching at the time and I stopped. I shut it all down. I thought, if I can't answer that question, I have no business teaching people. So I just shut everything down and just went into the massive learning mode and seeing back to what I love is me in a room, seeing people. And then once I began to feel like something was coalescing in terms of this approach that was very different than at least my perception of the original neuromuscular that I learned, some elements of that, which is why I never changed the name. Just like what you guys are doing, I'm sensitive to that. I want people to understand the history of where they came from. And we don't need 90 names for the same kind of thing, right? And it negates the history upon which things are laid. As long as that doesn't become a deficit where people who might be familiar with neuromuscular therapy 20, 30 years ago, it's like, oh, that's what you're doing. It's like, no, 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 no. I get to define what we're doing, not something else.
I think it's essential too. What I'm hearing though, Doug, it sounds like just a willingness to be engaged in endless pursuit is what
Absolutely. Absolutely.
and do you have anything to say to people who just aren't willing to put in that kind of work, Doug? Because it's a lot of work, and on both sides, therapists have to be willing to be an endless pursuer, and your clients have to be willing to be engaged in endless pursuit, right?
Yeah. This just came up the last couple of days. I'm still amazed at how clients give me more rope that I would have given up, but they're like, nope. And it's part of that, Kirby, is that it may be the first time in their engagement with any healthcare provider who said, I don't know, right? And then is willing to do the work to like pursue that. There's probably two kinds of I don't know. One is I don't know. That is boom, closed door.
Yeah.
Which also means that that healthcare provider is unwilling to do anything else, right? And now you leave and you are no longer a problem for them, but you're left to your own devices. They can go on their merry way. So for clients, this is maybe the first, I hear this all the time. You're the first person who said, I don't know. And what people remark about is, I always tell people, I'm Norwegian. We don't solve problems, we bore them to death. We think curling is breathtaking. So what can you say? So, it's just that I'm going to hang in there, and this is not over until it's over. People are stunned because they've never had a healthcare provider do that before. And I have to say, there have been many times where I felt like, okay, I'm just going to, maybe we should bail here, because what your improvement rate's like 15%, 18%, and I've had people say to me, listen, buddy, this isn't your thing, right? It's not up to you. This is the only slight improvement I've ever had in all these years. So no, we're not giving up here. And I have to say, but well, a little part of me is like, oh crap, I'm still on the I'm still on the hook, But in many cases, by switching things, doing different things, we actually figured it out. And then I learned something and I would have given up. Thank God they didn't. And again, if for instance, uh, five people come to you with neck pain and you do what you do and they're all better, the lucky those five people, right? You personally have learned nothing, but it's that person who comes and you do what what worked for the last five people and you get nothing. That is the doorway that says learning on it, right? Yes, walk through that doorway and all the richness in the field is behind that doorway. Otherwise, you just I have a fabulous answer and I hope it matches your question and you just keep doing that. Is it any wonder if that is the chosen pathway, why people drop out of the field after I don't know what the current thing is, but I would too, right? If you're just doing the same thing over and over again, God, how boring would that be? The clinic, as one of the therapists said here, like at least the work that we do physically, it's not that difficult because it's so precise, but mentally, whew, that's fatiguing, right? And so the growth, the richness is in that. Otherwise, and I do think also that's why people leave the field. It's one of the reasons. And to me, that makes it really sad because if you do the work, the richness is beyond that. I glance over at the cello and, when I first started that, good Lord, I sounded like a dying animal and we didn't have any mice in the house that first winter. They all left for safer territory. And it's interesting that in almost every discipline, all the work is front loaded, right? But the richness comes later. And I think there's this fallacy of, and I hope I didn't add to it by saying when I found this work, it resonated with me, but I was still an idiot. I mean, it resonated with me, but I was still incompetent, right? Even when I was confident, I was still incompetent. But the passion, right, that resonance meant that I was willing to do the work to get better at it. And this is the fallacy I've seen. Like I've been around some of the best artists, really in the world, in the music world, and in the athletic world. And I can tell you, I mean, all of them, you have no idea the work that they put in, and there are no cameras showing that. And so the myth of this is that, somehow they're just supremely talented and it's easy for them. And oh my God, there were times when I would be standing with one of the basketball players and people would come by and tell you, you are so talented. And I could just feel them tense up, like, really, really, haven't seen my family and whatever. And it's so insulting to say stuff like that to people. You have to do the work and not rely on, some modicum of talent. It's just such a myth and it doesn't serve us well. And that's the thing of you'll find your passion and then everything will be easy. Oh no, you'll find your passion where you're willing to put the flag down and work your butt off.
There's hard work everywhere.
Absolutely. There is no other way. Everything else is just we're just kidding ourselves.
I want to squeeze in some questions before our time runs out here, Doug. Talk to me about the Massage Therapy Foundation and the work you did with them and the experience of being the president of the foundation.
Yeah, it's so important. In many years ago, when I looked, like in those years when I said I wanted to look into the research, that was good. But if I looked just at massage research, most of it wasn't done by massage therapists, right? And a lot of it didn't seem to me at all applicable for the work that I was doing in the clinic. And so with the foundation, that whole effort, Bob King was one of the people who was also influential in my life and career, inspiring. He and several other people putting that foundation together was a really good thing at the time. And it's really important to just keep advancing the literature. We need a lot. There are so many gaps in the literature. It's going to take a long time to fill, but it's important to have that voice so that massage therapists also get to have some sort of influence in the design of the study, the execution of the study. That's really important. And, it's interesting because I don't have a bachelor's degree, right? I've spent my life doing this work and being in the clinic, and again, any pursuit that way was going to take me away from that, and I just like, no, not doing that. So I felt a little weird, running a research institute, like, and then I realized actually I have something to add here, which is that clinical focus. Yes, this is nice, but will that really affect the way somebody out there is going to practice in the real world? And so just, if I had a contribution, all of that, there's some great people involved in all of that. But I would say my contribution is trying to always keep clinical relevance in the forefront.
Can I ask, Doug, how did you get initially involved with MTF?
Um, yeah, I think what's really funny is, or pathetic, is that many years ago, I and my office was the recipient of an MTF grant that actually came through the University of Illinois, a person who was there. I didn't even realize, I didn't even know what the MTF was. Only when I was president did I look back through the stuff and go, oh, for God's sakes, how terrible is that? But I think if I remember correctly, I think it might have been either Leslie Young or Cliff Korn or both of them asking me to serve on a committee and then serve on the board. And then once I got on the board, I missed a meeting and they made me proud. No, it was a really cool thing of just being part of that all. So it was a great experience.
Awesome. I think it is really important. All of this community work that you've done with Champaign Rotary. Can you talk to me about that and maybe start with those who are unfamiliar with what Rotary is?
Yeah, so Rotary is an international organization of 1.2 million people across the globe in some 200 some countries. And I first was exposed to this as the recipient of a grant in 1992. Again, seeing people one after the other. And then suddenly I had the opportunity, I applied for this crazy story. One of my clients just said, you should do this. I didn't even know what it was. And it was going to Japan for 5 weeks, everything paid for, to study their healthcare system. I got to see acupuncture and shiatsu in Japan, and it was unbelievable. And it was life-changing for me as somebody who had never traveled outside the country to see it's a big world out there. And it was really transformational for me. So, my involvement with Rotary over the years got really intense in the beginning. Then I had a bit of a kind of a gap because of writing books and all the other stuff I was doing. And then over the last few years, very involved again, and now as president of that. And in that organization, certainly in this community, our Rotary Club of 150 members, it's really the thought leaders, the people who make this community happen. And I'll just say, because they'll never see this, that I feel really good that a massage therapist, right, was leading that organization. That speaks well to our field. We just had an enormous fundraiser that we do every 3 years, celebrating. There's always an honoree, and it was our athletic director and his wife, who are just amazing, amazing people, very community committed. The goal was to raise $300,000 that night. We actually raised over $500,000 that night. But to be on stage running that, a little part of me is thinking, just my own thing, this is really good for the profession, for the movers and shake 400 people who are big time to see. I'm always aware that I represent the profession, whether that's lectured at the med school, every year, have done many initiatives with the University of Illinois, including something called the Art of Science, which is very cool, using scientific images as art. And then that was just kind of a crazy idea 15 years ago. And now it's all over the country, and it's been a really great thing for the U of I, and it's been a really great thing for the U of I. So with that, and also volunteering at the Performing Arts Center, and they're heading up their 50th anniversary committee and a bunch of other things. So just got, and again, it was like a little ironic, the U of I Alumni Association Distinguished Service Award was pretty wild because I never went to the U of I, and don't have a bachelor's degree, and like, whoa, are you kidding me? But on the other hand, I'm so grateful because it's from all of those influences, all of those people. Like I appreciate, I'm honored and humbled by the honor, but the irony is everything in a way that I learned things that were reverberated from the university, people who were here because of the university, people who influenced me. Also, there were so many scientists who were also really influential for me in teaching me how to think, and just being around them. So it was a secondary influence. And I look forward in the big gala to be able to say thank you to those university leaders. There'll be like 400 or 500 people in that gala. And now I'm excited to be on stage to say, I hope you all understand the secondary influence that you have on the community, right? I know you're busy working with what you do, but as a community member, I want to be that voice to say thank you for all the work you do and the way this community benefits from the university being here.
That's incredible. I want to ask Doug, when do you find the time to breathe? Because that's a
Yeah,
lot going on.
yeah, there's a lot going on, but this again is like, passion is about, are you willing to do the work, to do that? And so sometimes, if you have a goal, things get tough. You're gonna like, forget, but if you're really mission driven, the struggles, like it's part of the deal, right? You just know that's going to happen. And so for me, if I'm really tired or starting to lose steam, it's remembering, why are we doing this? And I just go to the grocery store and see people struggling and clearly hurting. And it's like, that's why I'm doing this. It's not about me, and I don't know, for whatever reason, that just gets me right back on track of like, yeah, get over it, get back at it, go for it.
Well, when you take that approach, there's no shortage of reminders all around us in this world, right?
That's right. That's right. It's important to have a clear why, right, behind the what. And that's true in our work. It's true in our life, just to be cognizant of the purpose behind the action.
It adds mindfulness and meaningfulness, I think.
Absolutely. And that's, the interesting thing, if we look again, Kirby, at what keeps people in the field. So data from other professions, there's a lot to learn from that. The psych profession, certainly one of them. It's actually kind of fun this fall. I'm going to present at the School of Social Work, their big conference for social workers across the nation. Cool. It's a massage therapist at a social work conference, right? But talking about the parallels between the way we somatically approach things and the parallels with, it's the same nervous system, right? There's a lot of crossover. But in that field, the question was asked to people who had been in the field for 20 years or more, what keeps you in the field? And what keeps them, and I think it's probably true for us, is that knowledge that you are making a difference in someone else's life, right? Meaningful. And the knowledge that you personally are growing, personally and professionally. So I think that's probably the same with us as well. That sense of, I am growing as a person through the work, right? That's a good thing. And in that process, how lucky is it that we also get to make a difference in the lives of the people who grace our treatment tables?
Yeah. I've always thought of this as a blessing personally. Doug, let me guide us into some closing thoughts. Talk to me first of all. What do you feel is the importance of massage therapy history? And if you can, do you feel that there is a potential of our history playing a part in a real substantial way in practice?
Absolutely, because I think history is really important. It gives context to the present moment when you realize, in many ways, there have been other things in the past that are similar to this. And I think sometimes when I'm teaching and I mention a name, people who've influenced practice, like Moshe Feldenkrais, for instance, I find it really sad that people don't know his name, or, David Simons, or, you could go through the list, right? We need to understand where we came from, and the Ida Rolfs of the world and whatever. They all had quite the contribution. There's something to be learned in that. And especially if you're building a variation on top of something, you ought to know what that something is, at least to have some knowledge of that. And the other thing about that is also seeing the way things are a little cyclical, or come and go. Otherwise, you're lost in the moment. For instance, if you don't mind, I've done this long enough to remember when, that there was a whole thing with Rolfing. If you just get the structure right, symptoms are irrelevant. The symptoms will disappear once you get the structure symmetrical, right? And then it's like, yeah, not so much. And then it flips to structure is completely irrelevant, right? Like, and then stay tuned, because it'll whatever, trigger points are the answer to everything known to man. They don't exist. And then, whatever, like cupping is the, be all and end all, taping, there's some point where everybody's walking around with tape everywhere, right? And then all of a sudden it's like, what happened to that? It was just, was there a worldwide shortage or whatever? And then, cupping, and then, good Lord, what happens is all of those things have some really inherent value, and there are places where it's like amazing, it's over applied and then totally refuted, and then at some point what's left is, this is a really good strategy for this specific thing in this specific context, instead of saying just wiping it off the book. But we just do these incredible like swings of the pendulum, which are just kind of like, come on, really. And I think once, if you have a historical perspective, you begin to see that pain is no different, right? With that. We talk about the psychological aspects of pain, really good, right? Also remember, historically, pretty much all pain, was psychosomatic, and it's really your relationship with your mother, and that had devastating effects for people. So we just need to be careful about how we do things, and I think history will make you humbled, because you remember that at this moment in time, like this interview, if I watched it, I don't know if I'll be around, but 20 years from now, I'll be horrified at some of the stuff I said, right? And it's because that's the way it is. So I think we need to be aware of that and understand that in our present moment, it's like in the Mystery of Pain book, at the end chapter, it is, I hope that you found this useful and understand that this is the current understanding, and through my lens. And 15 years from now, we might think very differently about this. So never take this as a static thing. So our understanding in the present moment will always be changing. And for me, that's why in the seminar thing, I mean, we reprint the manuals for every seminar. Every seminar. There's no like closet with a bunch of manuals in it, because we keep tweaking things every single seminar. And if we're not learning, it's not good. So it's not a static, it's a dynamic thing. We're in a constant state of change, and that change should be driven by the desire for service.
I love that. Thank you, Doug. To follow up with that, and as someone who has been in an experience with the Massage Therapy Foundation, what do you think? Do you have any thoughts on historical research and how it might play a part in massage therapy at some point?
Yeah, I haven't given much thought to that. That's a really interesting, it's such a great question. It's too great a question to give a flippant answer to. I think that's just a really interesting area that should be explored. And I don't know how much it has, but I think it could be really a very important kind of foundational thing for the field. That's really, really an interesting idea.
Thank you. I'll take it. Tell me, Doug, just to close us out here, what are you most proud of?
I think I'm most proud of two things. One, the community engagement, that connection to the community and representing the field that way. And the second is educationally for therapists, helping people understand that the struggle is where it's at. And it goes back to that conversation when you talked about not getting better and feeling like the imposter thing. I'm super sensitive to that because I've seen so many therapists really struggle with this. And I think some of those things can come from sometimes it can come from educators who are like, you just do this and it'll solve it. And then of course it doesn't. And then the person's like, I must be a terrible therapist because it doesn't work. Well, yeah, wrong. So I think that's why I'm really proud of giving therapists a suite of tools and approaches so that they know that for any situation that presents to them, they have a multiple array of approaches which they can use to make a difference. And that gives confidence.
Beautiful. If you could choose one deceased person from the profession of massage therapy to have a conversation with, record their historical perspective, who would you choose?
Probably Bob King. I would love to have again, my conversations with Bob were me back then, and I think there were a few times when I saw his like eyes roll back like, oh God. So one, I'd like a second chance. And two, I have better questions to ask Bob now. So I would love to have that.
We're all entitled to a second chance, I believe.
Yeah, yeah, you bet.
All right. And on the flip side of that, who would you encourage? Who should we have in the hot seat next time as a future podcast guest?
Maybe somebody like Nancy Dale.
Mm.
Yeah, I think that would, long history of service to the profession, school owner, I think that would be a really good thing. And entry level education is a whole area that I have little to no experience with. And so I think, that would be a really good thing.
Yeah, of course. Nancy does have that illustrious career, a long standing career.
Yeah.
All right, Doug, to close us out finally, tell us what do you have coming up next? How could listeners or viewers get in contact with you or learn more about you?
hmm So probably if you go to the website PNMT, it's like Precision Neuromuscular Therapy, PNMT.org. I think that will tell you a little bit about the kinds of work. I'll be, I'm recording some, there's so many things going on. I'm working on writing an article and recording an educational thing for ABMP and working with people with knee replacements and especially dovetailing with physical therapy. Again, it's that understanding how we might then supplement and complement other disciplines. That I feel really strongly about that. And heading to teach in South Carolina at the end of this week, so that'll be fun. But there's a ton of different things going on and things at the clinic that are some really I'm excited about some of the initiatives that my office is doing. So more about that later, but there's always a ton of stuff going on. So honestly, just trying to make a difference.
All right, awesome. And then because we've mentioned the books, but we didn't have a detailed conversation about them, tell me if you can how you got interested, how you got started writing, and then how people can get a copy.
Yeah. So it really started with ABMP. Leslie Young at that time asked if I would write a column called Table Lessons. And it was really an interesting thing of a clinical narrative, right? Just person came in with this, here's what I did, here's what happened. And so the books are really, some of them are from that, but many of them then developed on top of that and or expanded because in the magazine that's limited in terms of the number of words. But it's been really fun to spend many, many years doing that, and I appreciate the opportunity to do that. The second book, especially much longer, it's also the choices made, but the choices that I didn't make. And it's really important that these are not a bunch of glory stories. In some cases, it was, you couldn't do it worse than this. And again, just helping people to understand that's real life in the clinic. So, and both of those are available on Amazon. It probably easy to do it that way. And now with AI, I tried to do this, but oh my God. But now you can actually do the audiobook if you want, or the Kindle, whatever. So those are available. The Mystery of Pain, I was hired by the University of Illinois Department of Family Medicine to do seminars on pain around the state for multiple disciplines. So there are PTs, PTAs, OTs, OTAs, nurses, some physicians, some chiropractors. Again, pretty cool that a massage therapist is the person doing that on behalf of the university. So after doing so many of those around the state of Illinois, that's kind of where because people kept asking me stuff, and I was like, this should be a book, and so that's so it was actually so, and that too is available multiple. It's available on our website or Amazon or wherever. So.
I'm just going to go ahead and speak personally. I love the Mystery of Pain. If you've ever taken any of the PNMT workshops, if you've ever taken a class from Doug, it makes really great supplemental to dig in even deeper. I think it's a great companion piece.
Thank you. Yeah, it was that writing. People always ask, "Are you going to do another version or another book?" And it's like that is such a long road. Oh my goodness. It takes a lot to do that, but it's yeah, oof, But I'm glad the idea, the hope is that it makes a difference for people, and it makes me feel good that I know several hospitals have used that in their programs as well for people with chronic pain. So that's a good thing. It's good to know that.
Yeah, absolutely. That's got to make a difference for sure. All right. Well, I want to thank you so much for your time, Doug, and squeezing in a chance to be here on the Hands of History podcast with us. I have learned a lot. It's been a great conversation.
It's been a pleasure, and thank you for the important work that you're doing. It's really, this is really cool. I'm thrilled that you're doing this, and happy to support it in any way I can.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Doug. If you enjoyed this podcast, please consider donating to the Society of Massage Archives so we can continue to bring you this episode and other resources to fulfill our mission of preserving and integrating the historical knowledge of massage therapy's professional advocacy and traditional techniques to guide and enrich our contemporary practices. Thank you. You have been listening to the Hands of History podcast, a production of the Society of Massage Archives. You can learn more about the Society at societyofmassagearchives.org. We are also on Facebook and Instagram. Do you know someone whose hands have helped shape the practice of massage? If you or someone you know would make a great guest for future episodes of this podcast, please email the Society at societyofmassagearchives@gmail.com. Society of Massage Archives, all one word, @gmail.com.